Here we are again at Good Games Hobart, another game of sharp practice and a homemade scenario where the French, who as you can see here are partly deployed, we've already had some chips on the table. John's British, and the aim of the whole game is to wipe the opponent from the table. However, in order to get some of your troops on, or our troops on, we have to at some point if you want to, have our Indians come in, we have to get over to the chief and begin negotiations, and that's going to be on a dice roll where we're going to try to roll 12 accumulatively. Whoever negotiates with the chief first will get 2 units of Indians onto the table. The other side will then have to deploy their Indians from their deployment point. Over here is an outpost. We don't know at the moment whose troops are in there. Once our units get within 12 inches, we will roll and then discover whose unit of either Corps de Bois or frontier skirmishers, I think, will appear. So you could actually get close and find that you're facing the enemy. The table is our typical North American. All the green is broken ground with hard going for the copses of trees. We're a few turns in now. No one has yet identified who the unit is in here, although John's unit is here ready to try to identify them on his next turn. His skirmishers are certainly pushing forward, as is his lines. The Indian chief is still there waiting to open negotiations. The bear has had a bit of a move, but he moved back when he heard the French. My French are moving at -1 pip per dice because they're thirsty. And the rest of them are moving reasonably slowly, unfortunately. So it's looking probably slightly better for the British at the moment. And here we see John rolling for the movement of his Highland skirmishers. They look like they're going to close with the chief first. Once they get into within 4 inches of the chief,
we have to stop at the wall, don't we?
It's up to you.
Because 11 gets me in.
It will be a major obstacle getting over a major obstacle.
Okay,
so let's say, if you wanted to, but you can commence negotiations with him, or you can even duck through that gap. It wasn't a tight bastion. So John looks like he's going to be commencing negotiations. If he hasn't used up all of his activations, he could do it start of this turn. My regulars have finally got into line, only for my officer to fall over in the mud, and it's going to take all of his next turn to get back up and dust himself off. Meanwhile, John's regulars and his skirmishers are looking at dishing out some more damage.
Okay, so
the troops are slow
to move them. So I'm going to. He's a level 2 officer.
Yep.
So I'm going to use commence negotiation.
Yep. So John's rolling to commence negotiations. He has to, because it's a level 2 officer over here, he has to roll a 13, accumulation of 13. If it was a level 3 officer, it would have been 12, level 1 officer 14.
So there's mine, I'm starting mine there 5.
So John has now started his negotiations to get once he gets to 13, his Indians will appear from here. My Indians will also appear, but they will have to appear right the way back over at my deployment point.
Okay.
Here, by the way, John finally managed to spot, and he worked out that they are his own troops in there. So my Corps de Bois then were allowed to enter on the draw of their chip from my deployment point. So the advantage of having your troops here and Indians from here is obviously that they're going to be straight onto the board, as opposed to now mine Corps de Bois, who had to come in from a long further off. Rather badly for the French here. Still not too many casualties yet. Shock is starting to pile up on the line, who still haven't fired a shot in anger, and won't in the next turn, because as you can see, their officer is still picking himself up out of the mud. John's, are they militia, John?
Yeah.
Are now moving up to put themselves into a position to put some flanking fire on my line. He's still got a bit of a group here. If I can just get my regulars to fire, hopefully can put some devastation on these guys. I've managed to get this unit here to turn around and fire at John's light infantry here. Other than that, I think the British are probably setting themselves up to dominate the battlefield soon.
In the job, they're shielding the Scots.
The Scots. So just as John said, the Scots are over here very close to completing negotiations to finally get the Indians on the table, even though we've only got about 20 minutes of battle left before we're kicked out of the store. John's frontier militia here are doing really well at protecting those Scots from my probably better trained Marines. Meanwhile here, my French regulars finally managed to open fire, and they're luckily, even though all that shock and they're being pushed back, they're holding the line reasonably well considering how much fire they've copped from these guys. So my line remains intact. Over on this flank, I've now got 3 units. My Coeur de Bois came in to shore up my guys here. So I'm hoping if it does enter into fisticuffs, I'll be able to get them into full support to be able to throw them back and maybe open up their flank. Let's see how it goes. At a bit of a deadline today, we have to be out of the store by 5. The game's more than halfway through. So what John and I have decided to do is take photos of the table as well as each individual unit, the number of men with their shock. So hopefully we'll get it right, or roughly right, next week. As you can see, this skirmish here is still well in the balance in the woods. My Coeur de Bois decided to run out of the woods to enter fisticuffs with these light infantry skirmishers, but failed to make the distance. I've whittled down a few of John's line. Managed to push back John's militia here after really dishing out their shock, but they're still facing forward. The Scots now have actually finished negotiations and John's Indians will be entering next turn. My militia are still holding up my flank. My guys my regulars have copped a fair hammering here, but are still, luckily, they've both moved back together to remain in formation. Over here, because we're running short of time, this one single Indian is indicating 2 Indian units of 12. So mine have already entered through my deployment point. As I said before, John's are going to be entering over here. And finally, most importantly, does a bear shit in the woods? Apparently he does. There he is. He's been hiding. I think he's been put off either by all the gunfire or by the rowdy Scottish accent. Hopefully we'll follow up again next week. Thank you so far, John. I think you have the upper hand.
Thank you, sir. A most enjoyable game.
Thank you.